Hey, all my IFG friends, this is Steve. I want to say, if you like movies like I do, we've started a new podcast called Happy Hour Flicks. You can find it anywhere podcasts are found. It's all about nostalgic movies that we love, and we bring on special guests each episode, and we also have specialty cocktails made for each one, too. So it really is an hour of a good time talking about movies that we love, like Gremlins, Seven, Free Willy. We talk about The Last Starfighter also. I mean, we kind of run the gamut across all the decades and really have a great time. So wanted to invite you to come over and join us. That's Happy Hour Flicks, anywhere podcasts are found.
This is the
Independent
Filmmaker's Guide
from Framework Productions.
Framework
Productions.
Hello, and welcome back to the Independent Filmmaker's Guide. This is your host, James Allerdyce. We're talking about the film The Shift. We're here with director and writer Brock Heasley. Hey, Brock.
Hey, James, how's it going?
Going great. Looking forward to chatting about the project. And we also have your producer, Ken Carpenter. Hey, Ken.
Hello, James.
All right. Thanks for being here, guys. We're talking about the new movie, The Shift. I got to go right out of the gate here. We usually start with pre-production and end with distribution and screenings, but I got to go right out of the gate and say congratulations on such a big rollout. You guys, your movie seems to be playing what it looks like to me across the country in all sorts of theaters. I see Regal theaters and AMC theaters and a number of others. I mean, huge rollout. So just congratulations.
Thanks.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thanks, James. Yeah, it went out on 2,400 screens last weekend, which was exciting. Brock and I are headed across the pond to screen the film in Dublin and London next week in support of its UK release on the 15th of this month. The irony of it is when this project set sail, there were early talks with the distributor about potential theatrical, but I don't think we would have allowed ourselves to think that it was going to have the platform it did last weekend. So yeah. It's been a remarkable journey.
Yeah, I mean, every filmmaker from independent filmmakers to big studios, I think would be very happy with the rollout you are enjoying. So let's talk about how you made it all happen. Brock, how did you start? Where does the genesis of this film start? And well, first, you know what? Let's take a step back and tell us about The Shift.
Yeah, so The Shift is a sci-fi thriller with a romantic vibe to it about a guy who's a pretty ordinary guy, and he is having some struggles in his marriage and at work, and he is approached by a mysterious stranger with otherworldly powers who calls himself the Benefactor, and the Benefactor is there essentially to offer him a new job. But that job comes with a price, and Kevin ultimately rejects that offer, and he ends up banished to a dark, tyrannical parallel Earth, where he then fights to get back to his world and to the woman that he loves. So it's a bit of a multiverse tale, and it goes off in some really interesting directions.
Wow! So we have sci-fi, fantasy, action, religious themes, maybe socioeconomic themes. I mean, it sounds like you packed a lot in here.
Yeah, it's a real blend of things. I'm a sci-fi fan from way back, and I think that genres can blend in interesting ways, and the movies that I love the most tend to do that. So that's certainly what we've achieved here with The Shift.
So, Ken, how did you get involved with the film, and when did you come in?
I came in the early part of 2022. When a friend made me aware that there was a project incubating at Angel. They had been incubating for some time, but it was scaling up a little, and I understood they wanted a producer with a little more experience. And I started where we always start, which is to say, send me the script. And I reached a conclusion 5 or 10 pages in that Brock was crafting something that was really unique to the space in which he wanted to operate, and that got my attention immediately. And so I said, I want to meet this guy, and found him to be a reasonable human being with a strong vision for the story he wanted to tell. And before you knew it, we were off and running.
You mentioned Angel Studios, right? So, Brock,
Correct, yeah.
how did you, what was the genesis of the project? When did you start writing it? And at what point did you get it in front of Angel, or was it commissioned by them in the first place? I mean, how did the film start, and how did it get going with this studio that would then, as I said, bring it to this great theatrical rollout?
Yeah, so my journey into this film started about 9 years ago when my wife and I both lost our jobs within 24 hours of each other. And prior to that point, I hadn't really considered a career in the film industry. It's not a great way to make money, at least at the start. But it was something that I felt very led to. And so within a year of kind of getting my feet wet, I decided to write and direct this little short film called The Shift, about this guy who has this encounter with this dark being and has this offer put in front of him. And I really saw it as kind of a Twilight Zone episode, to the point where my DP, I was like, hey man, I'll shoot this in black and white, because I was really thinking of this as like a Twilight Zone episode. And he's like, nah man, no, I don't want to do that. Like, this should be in color. And he was right about that. Color, a lot of people just have an aversion to black and white, and it turned out great. But actually it turned out a lot better than expected. It was my first effort as a writer director in narrative, and really it was I kind of just wanted to see if I could do it. And I loved it. I just loved the experience. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was really doing the thing that would have the most meaning to me. But I didn't think of it as a feature film. And it was Angel Studios, so they saw it. It was a blind submission. They had they have a way to submit materials and for consideration. And I submitted The Shift. At the time, they had a streaming service, and I really just thought, hey, if I can get on their streaming service, maybe I can make a little bit of money off the short film, which nobody ever does with short films. And they said, yeah, right, great, we'll put it on our streaming service, but do you have more? Is there more to this story? Would you want to turn it into something bigger? And I said, well, yeah, I've got some ideas. And they said, well, great. Well, we've got this crowdfunding system. We're doing this with this TV show called The Chosen. And we think we could do this with you, where we put your short film in front of people and we communicate your vision for the feature film. And then we can have people invest into your film. There's a way to do this now where it's not like Kickstarter, but people actually invest in the film and they can receive a return. And I said, well, great. Well, let's do that. And that kicked off that was in 2018. So that was really the kickoff of a 5-year journey to get to this point. And Ken came in about 3 years into that.
Wow. Okay. That this is a dream come true story for so many filmmakers. There's always this idea that, you can make that short film that then gets turned into the feature. But the reality of that is often very, very hard to do, almost as hard as any other path. Yes. Ken, when you came on board, I mean, did you guys use the same model as the short? Was this crowdfunded as well to get to the feature, or what was the process, moving forward from, how do we make this, how do we get this thing to be bigger?
Yeah, it's one of the great aspects of working with Angel is the crowdfunding model. And in our experience, and, if the adage is ever true that no two movies come together the same way, this was certainly very much our reality. But in our case, Brock, the crowd funded about a third of the picture, which was fantastic because, when you're trying to get an independent film set up, momentum is the key. Mm-hmm. Once the train leaves the station, your job gets not easy, but more reasonable. Yeah. Yeah. And that's what the crowd afforded us, is it created a sense that other people that came in were jumping on a moving train. And so I'm a big fan of crowdfunding now. I'm not sure the model's proven yet that we can rely completely on that if we want to do a film that we're going to do it at a certain scale. Mm-hmm. Maybe someone will develop the model, to the point where you can get multiple millions of dollars in from the crowd. But right now, Angel has cracked the means to get a reasonable amount brought in, and it was invaluable.
Yeah, I'm guessing, filmmakers often have this chicken and egg scenario where they're trying to get cast attached, but no one wants to jump in first without a little bit of money raised. So I'm going to guess, I don't know what the order of operations was for you guys, but I'm going to guess that maybe the crowdfunding helped you get going and maybe even helped get some of the cast attached that then moves the thing forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, once you have some money, you've got some legitimacy behind you. That certainly helped us to secure the cast. But I cut you off, Ken. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say it gave us a clear line of sight that we would be able, we thought, to put the rest of the financing together. Just, for the other filmmakers listening, we didn't actually extend offers until the financing was raised.
Right.
To your point, James, about the ultimate never-ending conundrum, catch-22 of which comes first, the money or the talent or the green light. We danced to that dance daily, but again, the crowd sure propelled us to a point where we could make offers.
So you have your money raised, you have your script in place. Let's talk about production. Where did you film? How long did you film for? What kind of crew did you have? And what did the gear package look like?
Yeah. I'll start, and then Brock, you can fill in. But we when I stepped in, James, we were intent on shooting this film in Atlanta, and we never really we just made that decision early on. Brock, I think perhaps you'd even were steering in that direction before I came on board. And so we made multiple trips to Atlanta, scouted locations, thought we knew the general region of Atlanta in which we were going to shoot. We were talking to crew people there, but without monopolizing the time we have and talking about where one shoots, what we came to feel was that as exciting and appealing as Atlanta is on many levels, we still, as a modestly budgeted independent film, we were very much a small fish in a large pond, rather. And at the 11th hour, we had convened in Atlanta to scout again, Brock, myself, and 3 or 4 other of our core team members. And we made the decision to run over to a town 2 hours to the west of Atlanta, Birmingham, Alabama, and just to explore what that might feel like. And I remember it clearly. Brock, it was probably within an hour that we were just maybe driving into the city limits. We just quickly surmised that texturally this was the city that in which we needed to tell this story. And then, I had some production relationships there that I knew I could tap into, but things really fell into place. We called the State Film Commission, and they were able to activate an alliance with us. And by the way, our experience on that front was fantastic. Go Alabama. And things fell in place in what almost felt like a providentially ordained way. And man, we never once lamented the choice to make this movie in Birmingham, Alabama. Served us very, very well.
I should mention to the audience that this is a film that does not take place in one location. This is not a family in a house. I say that because, honestly, especially if you're trying to get a movie made, there's some conventional wisdom to that. Producers always want to tell you, write a few characters into a single location, right? My writing partner and myself always lament that we struggle to do that because we start writing and the world gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Well, this is a movie that is bigger and bigger and bigger. Not only do you have multiple locations, you have multiple timelines, dimensions, all sorts of things. So, you have to have a place where that is going to be diverse enough location-wise, but also willing to work with you. And I'm going to guess that in Birmingham, Alabama, you probably had that experience where, the town, the city, the state were maybe more excited to work on a project like this. I say that because I made a movie in Missouri last year, and we filmed in New York, we filmed in LA a lot, but coming to Missouri, we felt so much more support from the community, where it wasn't just about the money, it wasn't just about another project coming in. It was people who were actually excited to see us there. Is that how it kind of felt there as well?
Totally. They rolled out the red carpet.
Yeah, no. And look, it makes a huge difference. Like at one point I thought about making this film in my hometown because, and I really wrote the script according to what I knew I could pull off in my hometown. I live in Fresno, California, but Fresno doesn't have a film commission, and it doesn't have a real understanding of what it means when a production rolls into town and what that requires. And as much as I love the people here and the environment, it just wasn't set up for that. And when we went to Birmingham and the commission was so responsive, and the business owners that we talked to were so responsive, we realized, oh my gosh, this is going to be, even though we really only had a couple of months before we started shooting, it made the pivot very, very easy. You've got to find a friendly environment. A friendly environment, in some ways, it can be even more important than, whether or not the location is just right. Like, you can adjust your thinking on the look of the film and the locations. If you've got a welcoming environment and people a community that really wants to support what you're doing, that's worth a lot. And that has to be weighed when you consider, where is it that you're going to set up shop?
Go ahead,
James, I was just going to say one other thing logistically that served us well in Birmingham is it being strategically located between Atlanta and Nashville, allowing us to fill some gaps crew-wise from both of those cities, and gear-wise, and certainly with strong supporting cast we drew from both Nashville and Atlanta in really sort of seamless ways, which was really beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, it's so helpful. Speaking of cast, how did you get your lead cast involved and excited and on board?
Well, I think
go ahead, Mark.
I think it comes down to being excited about the material, and what we heard from a lot of our cast was that the script, as it drew in Ken, it drew them in as well. And they also want to know that they're coming to be a part of a project in which they're going to be well supported, that we have our ducks in a row, that we've signed the contracts with the unions, and that we're doing everything according to to how it should be done, that we're not cutting those corners. I mean, it's definitely more of a producer question, but I think talent needs to see both things. They need to see that the material is strong, and they need to know that they're walking into a good environment.
Yeah, I that's all true, Brock, for sure. I always look at casting as a sort of as a three-legged stool, with the three components being, first, the material, the script, and the actors always, is there something to play, something that'll challenge me, something that'll stretch me? And I think Brock's script got the attention of managers and agents and ultimately talent. The second component, and it's just the real world of what we do, is the offer. Are you able to make real and realistic offers that are commensurate with what we're seeking to do? And then the third leg is, of course, the director. And, it's back to James, your earlier catch-22 notion. It's the same thing here.
Yeah.
Brock was a first-time writer-director, and that can either be a negative or it can be a positive. And the way I spun it, and the way our casting director spun it, was, here's a guy. Yeah, everybody's a first-time filmmaker at some point, but he's got a strong vision, and a great group of people have rallied around that. And the script speaks for itself, and there's a short film to look at. So we were able to shape a narrative around that key third leg of the stool. But, talent wants, to your question of how do we get talent in, they want to know who's going to be saying action and cut, and ultimately assessing, are we going to be in safe hands in the telling of this story?
Brock, speaking of the cast, I mean, you have a great cast assembled. You have some great leads, but you obviously have a couple, kind of big stars in this. How did it feel for you to be a first-time director, directing, Sean Astin, Neil McDonough, and these guys?
Well, it was exciting, and it was also, very intimidating. These guys have been on far more movie sets than I have, and they could probably direct this film themselves without any help from me whatsoever. And so what you're hoping for in an instance like that is, obviously, first and foremost, you're hoping that they bring their A game. And since these guys are professionals, they absolutely did. There was never any question of that. And then you're hoping that they can trust what I'm doing and what the team is doing, and that they can come in and give themselves over to it, and that I am capable of utilizing their skills as best as possible. And thankfully, and this isn't a line, this is just the truth. We didn't have any divas on set. Sean Astin, Neil McDonough, Christopher Palaha, these guys have worked in the industry for decades, and there's a reason they keep getting hired again and again. It's because they're genuinely great guys who care about their craft and turn in terrific performances. So I was very pleased to both direct them, but also learn from them, and I think that's really important. It was one of the key things that I tried to do as a first-time director, is to say, hey, I don't know everything, and if you've got ideas, let's talk about them, and let's dig into stuff. And I tried to be very, very open to that. Elizabeth Tabish, who plays Mary Magdalene on The Chosen, and who is just a terrific actor, she was somebody who came to me and said, I feel like the character is lacking something. And I said, great, let's talk about that. And she gave me the benefit of her perspective, and I rewrote the character accordingly. And it's to her credit and to the film's credit that character is now stronger than she was originally. So I really tried to approach it with the spirit of collaboration, but also confidence in the film that I'm making and the vision for it. And that's the other thing, is that actors, they want to collaborate, but they also want a director who's confident. They want somebody who really knows what they're doing and has a clear idea of things. And that can be a bit of a tug of war, on how do you balance that? How do you balance collaboration with a clear vision? Mm-hmm. And so that was just something I strived for the whole way through.
Well, speaking of, coming up with things on set and rewriting characters and directing actors, your lead villain, I will say, of The Benefactor, mm-hmm. Did you write that character that way, in terms of him being very stoic and icy and cold and calculating, rather than aggressive, big bad guy? I mean, is this the way you always wrote him and envisioned him? Because it really stood out to me as something different than what you might expect.
Yeah, no, The Benefactor, look, for those that don't know, it's revealed within the first 20 minutes. The Benefactor is really the devil.
I didn't know if we were trying to save this for.
Yeah, no, we can blow right past that. That's fine. He calls himself the Benefactor, and he calls himself that for a very specific reason that I think is pretty apparent. But it consciously is a very different take on that character, which we've seen in fiction a million times before. Al Pacino's done a great mm-hmm. version of it, all the way to George Burns has done a version of it. There's been so many different takes. And so we did try to do something very different. Now, I think it's interesting that you call him icy and cold. And I think based on what people have seen, and maybe in the clips that are out there, that is the impression you would get. But what I love so much about what Neil did, and which was very much written into the character, and that Neil really latched onto and saw immediately, which I don't think a lot of actors would have seen this, but he did, is that there is a humanity to the Benefactor. Mm-hmm. There's a humanity to the version of the devil that we're presenting in this film. And Neil, especially towards the end of the film, I'm not going to spoil the end, but he lets that humanity come out. and it comes out in such a surprising way, and it really just deepens your understanding of what the film is actually aiming for, and who that character is specifically. So I think we did find a way in that was new, and I think that's part of why Neil was really excited about playing it.
That character controls and kind of sets up these alternate dimensions and things, and within those you have so much art in this movie, and costumes, and what was it like? What was your process and vision to create these other worlds and some of this art and costumes and props that get really specific and unique? What was your art team like, and how did you facilitate the conversation, talking to them to kind of make it all a reality?
Well, this is where the indie filmmaking of it all really comes into play, because there was what I had written on we represent several different realities within this film. And there's what I wrote on the page, but I always had in the back of my mind, let's see what's available to us when we start getting these locations. And so it was very much a process of kind of rewriting during pre-production, where we would, for example, we have a scene that takes place at an abandoned mall. And so we moved into this mall, and the first day we did, I just walked the whole mall, both inside and out, and I just tried to imagine what are the different worlds and things that we could imagine happening here. So that mall became a strip club. It became a forest where a hitman executes a guy. It became a loading dock where a guy gets beat up. It became an airport, and it became a fast food place.
A soundstage.
We really turned it into a soundstage, and without really having to do much in terms of we didn't build any sets. We just chose our angles very strategically and chose where we, how we use the area very strategically. And so I just looked at the possibilities and then rewrote the script according to what we found at the locations that we found ourselves at. And that was a way to double, triple, quadruple, quintuple up on locations and really establish different worlds. Watching the film, you'd never know that all of these things were in such close proximity to each other.
I love it. I mean, it's the perfect combination of indie and studio to kind of create this big world. Speaking of studio and going back to Angel Studios, they have been so successful. Now, I don't know all the details, but it's a faith-based studio. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's more of a light-based studio. So what they really do is they're making stories that amplify light. And that generally does include stories with a faith element, but it doesn't have to.
Oh, yes. I can't recall the name of the animated series, but I remember seeing this. I believe it's by them too.
Wing Feather Saga.
Yes.
And Tuttle Twins is another animated series.
The Wing Feather Saga caught my eye as well. And, they're doing such a great job at, I think, I see, as I talked about your rollout here, at really reaching the masses. It's interesting to me right now, if you look it up, the two, highest grossing genres are horror-based movies and faith-based movies. So, it's
pretty opposite.
Yeah, it's incredible rollout. Ken, are you working with, are you a producer for Angel Studios? Can you speak to how they're going to continue moving forward and what the game plan is?
Yeah, I'm an independent producer, so I may take other material back to Angel, but I'm not part of their core team there. What I do like about what I see at Angel and what I hear there is that unlike some other operations within that genre, if you can call it that, Angel doesn't wave a proselytizing, agenda-heavy flag in the material they're seeking to develop. I think a more appropriate term for what they're doing, if I can say so, although again, I'm not part of their core team, is that it feels more faith adjacent or faith accessible, faith friendly. versus faith hit you over the head with messaging.
Right.
And you know, I have a lot of friends and colleagues who move in and out of this space. I know it well. You know, some of the films seem to be characterized by a certain patina that what I like about Angel is they're trying to, in the best ways, push the envelope and find new ways to create entertainment that reaches the audience in this space. And you know, that back to what you asked earlier, that's what drew me in when I became familiar with Brock's project and read the script. Was it was something altogether new. And the one thing whatever challenges you may or may not have with the shift, it's not heavily derivative from other films in the space.
No.
Well, I think it's obviously pretty successful at the moment. Let me ask you, Brock. You know, again, coming in, being a first-time director, and being able to direct a movie of this size, what lessons would you? What advice could you give to an aspiring filmmaker who wants to do the same?
Oh gosh. You know, I think the biggest thing is just finding that story that you have to tell. My goal obviously was to be a filmmaker, but I would say that was secondary to, I really, really want to tell this story, and I have stories that I want to tell. I think you have to lead with that. I know people who lead more with the idea of, you know, oh, I want to make movies, and I want people to see me, and I want to walk that red carpet and things like that. And none of that has ever been a motivator for me. I think your motivation determines your how far you can go. I really do think that, because look, I came into this with no connections at all. That short film that I made that kicked all this off, that wasn't crowdfunded or anything. That was made with $500 and some volunteers, and that was it. That was all I had. That was all I had in the world was $500. That wiped me out. And I was able to take that and then turn it into all of this. And that is only because I was completely driven by the desire to tell this story. And that more than anything. And for me, there's also a faith component there where I very much, you know, tried to be led as I went through this process. But having that clear vision and that clear hope is what sustained me and really guided my decisions, so that I wouldn't, you know, end up going down rabbit holes that weren't helpful to the eventual goal. It can be very easy to get distracted and to start, you know, working on this thing and that thing. And I tried to make sure that the things I was working on were things of quality and things that I could learn from, and not just, you know, chase the rabbits that would put me on, you know, this red carpet or that, or, you know, like this. There's just, I think there's a lot of different reasons that people get into this. And for me, it was always very clear. It was about the story, and it was about wanting to make something that I'm proud of.
Ken, how about you? Having a career of facilitating movies and making them happen, you know, what is your advice to aspiring filmmakers?
How much time do we have? I think probably the most salient thing I can offer, James, is, you know, I find myself thinking a lot these days that in this crazy business of ours, movies are easy to talk about. It's an entirely different thing to make one and to make it well. And I say that to say I feel like I see a lot of people who are perfecting their pitches and how they stump for their film. And that's all good, and that's all important. You've got to give good meaning, and you've got to heighten confidence and all that. But of all the many adages I've heard over the years, one that really rings true is that good art rises. And, you know, a lot of emerging filmmakers, how do I break through? How do I get in? How do I knock down those catch-22s that James is talking about? It's the best advice is just work on your craft. Work on your craft, and a good story will mysteriously, whatever your worldview is, your belief system, Good art will navigate the matrix of this, again, wacky world and find its way. The industry is looking for the next strong visionary storyteller. And so, work on your craft, find, put in the work on that script until it demands to be made, and scrape together your $500 and call in every favor known to man to make the short film that says, okay, I have a reasonable idea about how narrative film is cut together and constructed. And, yes, learn how to pitch your movie well, but back it up with a craft that is arresting.
Well, everyone listening can see an example of that arresting in the film The Shift. It is in theaters. Check it out. Guys, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, James.
so much, James.
Hey friends, we just wanted to take a quick moment to talk about two personal things. First, we wanted to thank you, our listening community, and our wonderful guests, learning so much together along the way and continuing to learn, sharing our stories, making a lot of new friends, and collaborating, which is exactly what this is all about. Which also brings me to my second point. In great part to many of these new relationships, we wanted to let you know that we've taken a lot of this advice ourselves and made our own narrative feature film, Herd, H-E-R-D, Herd, which is premiering this October on Friday the 13th in select theaters as well as on VOD. Personally, I think it's the perfect kind of scary movie to watch during our favorite scary season. So we'd love for you to celebrate with us and watch Herd. You can pre-order it on Apple TV and, of course, do the communal thing, see it in theaters. Of course, for all of this, please see our show notes, but basically, we're going to keep it all updated at herd.film. That's herd.film, herd.film as well. Thank you again, and be sure to give us a rating and a review over on Apple Podcasts so we can continue to build this community and collaborate. IFG, how movies get made.